Okay, welcome everybody to Game On. Welcome everybody to Game On High Yield Innovation. We're going to have a lot of fun with an interactive exercise. I do a lot of these kind of training sessions, and I'll tell you, this is the thing people remember 10 years later. So high yield innovation portfolio simulation. First, a little bit about my company. SmartOrg connects innovation and finance. And I'm getting blown away. Sorry.
And that sound is the wind blowing through your mic.
It's my mic. It's not this one. Okay. Is that okay for everybody? Well, I could try just yelling, but that might screw up the video. All right. So SmartOrg connects innovation and finance. We have a portfolio evaluation platform that helps companies align on the questions of where and how much to invest and how to drive the upside in their portfolios. DuPont, I think, did a pretty good story today, so I appreciate what they said, but that's the kind of work we do with companies. Myself, I'm David Matheson. I have been in this business for a very long time. I've worked in pretty much every industry from nuclear waste cleanup to movie production. What I've learned about portfolios and evaluating innovation is that while the verses vary from company to company, the chorus is always the same. So the way I work is I know some of the choruses, you know the verses, we put it together, we make a better song. I am the founder of SmartOrg and author of a book called The Smart Organization on Decision-Making in Research and Development Innovation. So basically, mom's real proud, I guess would be a way of saying it. But all this is nice, but what you really need to know about me is that my favorite food is chocolate. Any other chocolate lovers here? Okay, so Sandman is chocolate lover. Well, and then I brought some. Now, I didn't, I brought two here. I understand this is a Hershey brand. Is the Hershey lady here? Maybe? Okay. So I think we probably need to start, though. For me, the conferences are about getting to know each other as much as anything else. So I'm going to pass this chocolate around, and everyone just take a few minutes, introduce each other to your teammates at your table, find someone you don't know, tell them what you do for a living, what your favorite food is, and we'll spend just a couple minutes on this. So go. Start some chocolate around.
Detroit area? He's out of Warren. Warren, Michigan. Excellent.
If we could come back together. I learned to do this when I was in like 3rd grade. Can anyone else do that? What I'm looking for is someone who can do the whistle, the really loud one. And what I need is a teacher, because this is as far as I got in 3rd grade. So that's my special come to attention sound. All right, so favorite food, what was the favorite food here?
Chocolate.
Chocolate, yes. How about over there? No, they don't have a favorite food. All right, the losers. All right, how about this table here?
A mixture of Indian, Mexican, and sushi.
Indian Mexican sushi. Fusion. Yes. Strawberry shortcake. What's one from over here?
Sushi and then grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Oh, okay. How about over here? Lots. And you guys, second chance. What's your favorite food now? Pizza. Okay, there we go. So let's get started. I want to introduce sort of the basic issues we're going to be dealing with. People talk about innovation management, and I think Eric Ries said a nice point, made this point essentially, but this cartoon is so lovely, right? So we're going to go do something that's new, it's wild, it's wonderful, and we will, of course, want to be successful. What people think is that success is some kind of linear trajectory. But of course, it's not. What it really looks like is this wiggly, squirmy thing. So I've been doing a little poll. How many of you have had a success in your life? How many of you had it go in the straight line? I got one. Oh, man. I don't know. My experience in life is What, the train was on time? Is that what happened? Something like that? Okay. So this is very challenging when you're trying to look at it from a financial point of view, right? Because the finance people want some kind of predictable forecast. Now, the second issue we're going to be dealing with this is the central challenge of portfolio management. This is Kaveh Emter's investment. It's not really a growth or a value portfolio. It's more of a feel-good portfolio. So in portfolio management, people talk about the word balance, right? That's a good idea. Yeah, I would endorse this. So the thing is that balance is often a kind of cover-up as a sort of example. People make portfolio decisions for social reasons, not for reasons of what makes the company go. So for example, portfolio means you're going to say no to something. So you guys want to fund one set of projects, you guys want to fund a different set of projects. You can't agree. You don't have the evidence to resolve this. How do you actually decide? Well, usually you split the difference. That's compromise. It's a good political solution, but that's not balance. So balance doesn't mean everybody gets something. Balance means you're working across different time horizons or different businesses or whatever. So people confuse the feel-good of the portfolio with whether the portfolio can actually win. And this gets dressed up in a lot of language like, quote, strategic projects and so on. That all sounds really good, but basically boils down to political compromise, because at its heart, portfolio management is a conflict resolution process. So that's enough kind of theoretical introduction. Let me get kind of right into this. I have been teaching at Stanford their portfolio management course, and this is by far the most popular thing and the thing everybody remembers later, and the thing that we use with DuPont to help senior management sort of get it about how innovation plays in a portfolio. I could literally talk about this all day, but I believe in the Mark Twain principle of learning. A person who undertakes to carry a cat home by the tail learns 10 times as much as the person who merely watches. So I have a bunch of cats here, and we're going to try this. Now, I have a confession to make, which is I have a wasted youth. I play Dungeons & Dragons. Any other Dungeons & Dragons players here? So 3 or 4, that's great. My daughter plays now, but they do it on computers. It's crazy. But I want to know, a lot of you didn't raise your hand. As far as I tell, there are 2 types of people, those who play Dungeons & Dragons and those who beat up people who play Dungeons & Dragons. So I know where I stand with 3/4 of you now, right? But I've done my best to make this good. And so I'm going to use dice to simulate a portfolio and put you in the driver's seat to see how this works out. And I think you'll find there are some surprising insights from this. So I've got to set up how this game works. I'm going to assume that a project has 2 steps. The first step I call development success. Now for me, development success is very broad. It's technical success, it's market acceptance, it's maybe new chat, it's whatever you need to do to go from 0 to something. And that's a kind of, I'm going to treat that as black and white. I know in the real world there are many shades of gray, but I'm just going to say it either succeeds or it doesn't. And I'm going to simulate that with this beautiful 4-sided die here. And the way we're going to do this, and you will have a moment to actually roll some little dice and try this out, is you roll it like that, and if it comes up, well, let's do a 4. You'd look on that chart. A 4 is a failure. That's worth nothing. That project didn't work out. Sorry. If I were to roll a 1, so you just read the thing pointing up there, that's a success. Woohoo! Everybody has a party because, of course, we've had a development success. We hit our milestone. Yay! But now, of course, that's just the beginning, right? So the commercial success or the commercial value is the unfolding of the whole business over its entire life, all summarized into a single score, right? So you don't know that at launch, but you learn that over the life of the business. So that's generally much more colorful. So we'll use a colored die for that. And you just sort of roll the die. And this particular project has a 3. So it succeeded, and I rolled a 3. So that's worth 3 points. So far, so good. Does this metaphor work? I mean, you have these sort of stages in your projects. Does this kind of map onto your reality at all, I hope? OK, good. So it would be really boring if we only had one kind of project. So I have different kinds of dice. The success-failure part is, of course, black and white. So I have black and white dice. This one represents a hard project. It succeeds on a 1 and fails on everything else. This one represents an easy project. It fails on a 1 and succeeds on anything else. This project represents some kind of small or incremental improvement. But this one, which is a little wonky because they're magnets, this one goes all the way to 20. So you get a lot more upside potential in this. But this is a big project, big potential. Now, this, of course, doesn't guarantee that it's going to do better in any given instance. But if you had to pick one, I'd bet on a higher score from this, right? So that's big, small, easy, and hard. So those are the 4 kind of things we're going to work with in this simulation. And that gives me these 4 kinds of projects. So if you look at this little grid, the upper left is the bread and butter, easy but small. Now, because I know we have some literalists in this audience, I see no pens. OK. We'll use Sharpies. Give me some examples of bread and butter projects in your organizations. This is the part where you shout something out. New color. What else? Methodology improvements. My abbreviation is terrible, isn't it? Yeah. One more. New geographic expansion. OK. Now, if you go diagonally across that matrix, you get the other combination, which is a difficult project. It's probably going to fail. But if it works out, it's actually pretty big. It has the potential to be pretty big. I call those oysters. So what are some examples of some oyster projects in your organizations? Replacing banking. I want to talk to what your organization does.
Autonomous cars.
Autonomous cars. One more? You guys don't have any oysters? All right. Well, so we have 2 examples. If you go to the upper right, you have sort of the holy grail of innovation. It's what every CFO wants. It's the pearl. It's easy, and it's big. I mean, who wouldn't want to have this kind of project? Anybody can think of some examples of pearls? OK. Adjacent market. iPhone version 2, right? It was an oyster at version 1, and then it became a pearl for version 2, right? Anyone else? So the last kind of project, again going diagonally across the matrix, is difficult and small. I call these white elephants. Now, I realize none of your companies actually has a white elephant project in it, but you're all innovation professionals. You have friends in other companies, and maybe their companies have some white elephants. So what are some examples of white elephants? Tough tech, new customer. What else? Anybody have a pet project in their portfolio or know of one?
Launching into a small market.
Launch into a small market. How about an oyster where the market goes away? Right, you think it's great, but you don't check again? Anyone have experienced that? Okay, so these are the 4 kinds of projects we're going to deal with in the portfolio. And that's probably enough kind of on mechanics. So I have a bunch of kits, which I'm going to rent. And they consist of a bunch of different projects and a handy little box that explains how to read the dice and shows the little matrix. So we're going to rent these for $5 each for a team. Now we're going to play, since we're playing for money, of course, better explain how to win. You're going to pick 5 projects. There are 10 in there. 5 are going to get funded, 5 are going to be unfunded. And you're going to simulate the results of your 5 projects. So if you get 10 points or more, I'm going to give you $10 back. So you double your money. If you get less than 10 projects, you get nothing. I have to warn you, it is possible to lose. And from a gambling point of view, I'm going to walk away with a thinner wallet. So this is not a good deal for me. So it's a very good deal for you. Additionally, however, this game is competitive. So we're going to divide into teams here in a bit. And whichever team gets the most points is going to get a market share bonus of $20. And just to show you I'm good for it, I have it right here. See? $20. And where can I put it where it won't blow away? There's a giant bolt right here. Put some chocolate on it. I don't know. There it is. OK. So there's $20. Oh, plus the chocolate bar. This is the Mayan Pepper Chai Chocolate Fusion Bar to the winning team. So we got the money and we got the chocolate for the winning team. So it's a competitive game. Now this represents the competitive dynamic in your industry. And I have found, roughly speaking, let's call it 2 kinds of competition. So one is sort of like specialty chemicals in a way, or many industries are like this. What matters is whether you have a winning product for a particular niche, right? So in specialty chemicals, you might be the best red marine paint, and somebody else is the best black marine paint. I don't know if that's really true. I made that up. But you win these little niches by having the technically dominant product in each little niche. And that's how you win, by getting a lot of them, right? Other kind of industries are more guerrilla games. So my favorite example of this is Microsoft. Microsoft arguably does not have the best product in each of its niches. But it's Microsoft, right? And so because it's the standard, because it's big, it gets all kinds of extra benefits. So this represents that element in this game strategically. Just a quick show of hands. I'm going to make you do a forced choice question. So your business, is it more the guerrilla game, or is it more add up all the little pieces? So everyone's in the middle, I know. But just how many are more like add up all the little pieces? So maybe a third. And how many are more playing guerrilla games? You got to win to win. And that's like a half, and the rest of you are wondering if you like chocolate or not, I think, for the prize. All right, fair enough. So we're going to rent these out. You're going to analyze the portfolio, select projects, and simulate the results. As instructed, I'm going to drag this out for entertainment and educational purposes and to drive a good discussion. And ultimately, this whole game is a vehicle for us to have the conversations we want to have and share with each other. So that's like the prime directive of the whole thing. So with that, the store is open. You need to form a team. Teams of 2 or 3 work pretty well. So buddy up with people. We can facilitate the buddying up if you want. You may need to move tables if you want. And pull out your wallet. $5 per kit.
Thank you.
You have change.
So the task. All right, if I could get everyone's attention for a second. Some of you have decided, some of you are still working on it. A couple ground rules, don't roll the dice yet. Mechanically, the task is to pick 5 and put them in the box. There will be an empty hole, I know it. The cleverer ones of you have figured out that if you open the bags and rearrange the dice, you can make this really, that's called cheating. Please don't do that.
We'll put the bags in there or just the dice?
You put the bags in there. But it turns out you guys are all, important executives of your portfolio companies here, and your staff has done some analysis of this portfolio, and some of the things they've discovered are shown here. The value of each kind of project, the risk and return of different strategies, and some of the competitive analysis. Who's interested in this before you have to decide? Got some interest? Okay, so let me run through some of what they found. How many of you are funding the Pearl? Okay, that's a kind of are you awake question, right? So that's here's my cartoon for that. Here's research and development. I don't know if you can see it. The screen's a little small. That's money growing on trees. And Henderson, you've got the folks upstairs pretty excited over this project. So, go Pearls. How many of you are funding the White Elephant? You're funding the White Elephant? Yeah. Interesting. Why? That's your plan. Yeah?
It's a long shot, but we put one in the portfolio.
The White Elephant is the difficult and small one, right? Okay. Well, most people, yeah, you're learning about the competition here. Most people have this sort of treatment about white elephants. If anyone feels squeamish about arson, we'll move on to other options. And I think, as Henry said, sometimes white elephants are a little more subtle than just killing them, but certainly portfolios have them and you got to deal with them. So the basic issue here is the bread and butters and the oysters, of course, right? So just a quick quality check, you should have 4 of each in your set. If you don't have 4 of each, we got to swap out some dice because it's important that everything is identical. Yeah, 4 at the beginning, right, from the 10. Yeah, you can choose whatever you want. So let's talk about a portfolio evaluation process and how that might work. I have kind of 4 stages I think of: evaluation, calibration, and decision making. And an evaluation, what's a project worth on its own merits? So let's start with the example we started with before. This is a white elephant. What is this project worth? Anyone have any idea?
expected payout.
So he's doing some math here, 0.25 times the expected payouts. Anyone know about probability analysis, right? Expected value or something like this, right? Does anybody actually do that in their company?
Yeah, that's
No,
why
of
we're
course,
here.
of course not. So what do you actually do? So I suspect you use the business case method, right? You make a bunch of assumptions, you put them in a spreadsheet, and you show a hockey stick. Eric Ries talked about this, but the question is, what hockey stick exactly do you show? And I have found that there are 3 types of hockey sticks people make. So the first one is a very high case to show what's possible, a low case so that you can exceed expectations, or a, quote, most likely case. I'm not completely sure what that means, but that's the standard people use a lot. Has anybody tried any of these methods before? Has anyone tried all of these methods before? So what's the standard at your organization? Outrage. He said outrage. You did say outrage. Average. Okay, so here is the high number. Some of you used the high number before, right? So in this example, a high is a 6, right? That's the biggest number that's possible, so let's say 6. And the thing about the 6 is it's kind of the big lie you tell to get funding, right? And it has a very interesting property that as the truth becomes revealed, the value gets smaller. That's a very interesting design of a management metric, but a lot of people use this method. Now, there's an interesting kind of social dimension to this, which is who in the organization has to pitch their project by saying 6? You ever thought about it? Who has to make a big hockey stick? Let me help you out here. Is it the politically powerful or the politically weak person?
Weak.
Politically weak, and why?
Because they need to hit a home run, otherwise they're not going to get it funded anyway.
Yeah, see, they have no other way of getting their project funding. He said they have to hit a home run or they're not going to get it funded, right? So the politically weak have very little options to manipulate the system, so they have to make a big claim. So let's look at the flip side. A low case. Now, the great thing about this is you may be able to exceed expectations with this low number. And, of course, it works best when it's already approved. So if your financial system is a checkbox after the decisions are made, this is a great way to go, right? Because then you can exceed expectations. It can also be used as a weapon, right? So if you're the politically weak person here, then and I want to destroy that project to make room for mine. So he's the weak guy. I go over and say, his project. He said 6. I know that's pretty cool, but it might be a 1. And then you just walk away. And I've now planted fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and that is probably worse than actually making the business case that says 1, because the fear, uncertainty, doubt will kill it. So let me ask this next question, which is, who in the organization can pitch the 1? The politically weak or the politically powerful? So the powerful person does, right? So there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy here. The powerful person can pitch the low numbers, exceed expectations. That actually makes them more powerful. So once you can get in this gravy train, you're in good shape. So I have a question for you. If you think this politically powerful weak thing is going on in your organization, let me ask, if you see a business case and it shows you some numbers, does it tell you more about the project merits, or does it tell you more about the status of the person doing the pitching?
Well, in your example, it sounds like the person pitching.
The person pitching has a huge amount to do with it, right?
Yeah.
And so we pretend somehow that this comparative thing is meaningful, but we've actually designed a system to drive all the information out of it by virtue of looking about business cases as the idea behind valuation. This is probably the common method, most likely. It's not clear what it means here, a 3 or a 4. It's quite arguable, but let's not quibble over that. So call it 3 or 4, fine. But the thing about this one is the most likely case in this example is actually 0. And that's completely unworkable. This is a risky project, and if you're going to include projects in your portfolio that are risky, the standard of most likely actually is failure, and that's a really hard way to plan. So this one sort of breaks down also. So none of these methods actually works, I think. The problem is that it is completely and utterly baked into the way everybody thinks about value. Now, I think business cases are actually really helpful to think through. They give you an idea of the scenarios and the futures you're trying to create or avoid. But you need a different idea of value to think about portfolio. And it's the math. This gentleman, what was your name again?
Joe.
This is the math Joe was saying, the math some of you shot out. It's sometimes called option value or expected value, but it's basically a probability weighted average over many scenarios. Can you guys see the screen from the back, more or less? All right, so the way this works is you start at the end. So I've got 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 points. I've got a 1/6 chance of hitting any one of them. So the math is a 6 times 6 plus a 6 times 5, all the way to a 6 times 1. And if you put them all together, that's 3.5. Sometimes it's called the probability weighted average. But that's the 3.5, but there's still more uncertainty here. So I've got to roll that one back. So it's 25% chance of the 3.5 plus 75% chance of 0. So this project is worth 0.875. So that's a metric of value. And this is a different concept. It's more like, in the startup world, this would be called the valuation. It's what the business is worth. So a young startup has their hockey stick. They say it's going to be great, but people don't transact that way. They say, that's a beautiful dream, but you're only worth a little bit of money now because you haven't demonstrated it. Right? And so you've got to get this idea of value to be different if you're going to be able to get a high-yield portfolio in your business. So what you find is, if you put this all together, and here's the information for you guys to inform your portfolio decisions, the pearls are worth 7.875, so they're the most valuable. Yes. I probably didn't need a lot of math to tell me that, right? The oyster project is worth 0.875. That's the example we did. Again, I probably didn't need a lot of math to tell me that one wasn't very valuable. And then the bread and butters and the oysters have the same value at 2.625. So it doesn't tell me too much about how to make that trade-off because they're equally valuable. Yes, please.
So isn't it equally more difficult to come up with those probabilities? Isn't it even more difficult to come up with the probabilities of each of those events actually happening? I mean, it's one thing if you're rolling a dice.
Yeah. So is it easy to come up with the probabilities of the events or the ranges of the 1 to 6 and all that kind of stuff? So I'll speak sort of practically for a moment. And the answer is it's easier. And the issue is that, well, there are two issues. One is don't even pretend this is accurate. No business case ever is. What you're trying to do is paint a picture of the future you're trying to create and the obstacles between you and that success. Okay, so you're trying to fundamentally drive a conversation about what is the path to a future we would want to create, how would we know, and what might be the bailout points. And the probabilities show up as an expression of that conversation. The second point to make is that I have seen organizations wrapped around the axle on the business case, sometimes for years. They can't agree on what the number is. This is just a wasted conversation. I've literally come into companies and switched the format from arguing about a business case to talking, say, about ranges. And people will agree on a range much more easily than they'll agree on a particular case because they all know what's uncertain. So people fall into a precision trap that makes the numbers hard to estimate. And if you move this direction, your need for precision goes down, and it can take man years out of the planning process because the estimation is actually easier. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. If we look at this grid, there are a couple startling things about this, about your portfolio choice. So what do you say if you're the owner of the White Elephant Project? Is that project bad?
It's a great project.
It is a great project. Yeah, so that's how you feel about it, which is how people feel. And is it valuable? What do you guys think? Is the White Elephant a valuable project? What was that?
If I were the owner, I would say it has value.
It has value. And the math says it has value, right? It's worth 0.875. How are we going to walk it? We have to get everything we can get. It's worth 0.875. We should do it, right? And of course, it's strategic because I like it, right? So the thing is that the White Elephant Project is actually a valuable project. And I think this leads to a sort of paradox in portfolio management, which is you've got to make a comparative choice. So portfolio management is essentially about saying no to good projects. So this is it's called an efficient frontier. I call it the CFO chart because this is the cumulative investment against the cumulative value. If you only have one project to fund, you fund the pearl because it's got the highest value. The second project to fund is either an oyster or bread and butter. You do that up to some kind of limit, and you have to say no to the rest. And the white elephant isn't a bad project. It's just the last project. And so the cost of the white elephant project isn't its resource cost. It's actually the opportunity cost from displacing something else. So this is a way in which portfolios are not collections of projects. People think that a good portfolio is a collection of good projects, and that's actually kind of wrong. It's also kind of right, but they miss an important point, which is the opportunity cost of doing these projects. Yeah?
If I hear you correctly, if you're not at the end of your resources,
Yeah.
and you're not at the end of your money,
Yeah.
capacity, you should be running white elephants all day long.
Sure. And you might want to also say, maybe I need better ideas. But if it's not in evidence, you don't have it to pursue, right? So he's saying if you had more resources, you'd fund it, and you probably would. Or you could. So portfolio management is about comparative choice, but it's also about saying no to a good idea in order to fund a better one. And the question is, how do you make no stick? But see, I want to bring this alive a little bit for you. What's your name here?
Chad?
Chad. OK, so Chad's a great project leader. His project is going through its stage gate project. He's a little behind budget. He's running a little late. Got beat to market by the competitor, having a technical problem, lost some critical team members. Sorry, Chad, you're done. Right? Move on to something else. OK, so we feel bad for him, but that's a kind of no that sort of works. All right? And what's your name? 80. So 80 is a great project leader. He's firing on all cylinders. He is ahead of budget. He's ahead of schedule. And he's going to deliver. So he's our hero. And I'm sorry, we're canceling your project.
Okay.
Yeah, would you like to know why?
Yeah.
Sorry, what's your name again?
Vincent.
Vincent over here. His project's better. That's why we're canceling yours. Now here's the question. What goes through his head when the answer is that Vincent's project is better? Oh, he doesn't like Vincent. Vincent's better. Who does he know? Who did he manipulate? What bribe did he pay? See, it's just gone in a political direction around conflict resolution. And often, he doesn't have real visibility into where his project actually stands. How many of you share your information publicly about the evaluations of your projects? A couple.
Within the company?
Yeah, to all the stakeholders, right? So if they don't see it and they don't believe it, they have no possibility of letting go. So there are two methods here, power and persuasion. So power is, I know we're saying no to your projects. We'll give you the weekend to grieve. Come back Monday, ready to do something else, or don't come back, your choice. All right. Okay, so that's power. But persuasion is the idea that we're actually going to build a portfolio system and an evaluation system that convinces him to abandon his own project. I call this the gold standard. So the political loser comes to the same conclusion himself. I will report that this actually is achievable sometimes. It is not always achievable, but my advice is it's always the standard. Because it creates a transformational opportunity whereby people will let go of their own project. How many people have trouble getting people to let go of projects? This is the way to do it, is if they realize that something else is better, they will move also. And indeed, they'll also understand what it is that makes projects good, and so they'll propose better ones the next time around. So you teach people how to make better projects this way. If you pursue the gold standard, you'll probably end up at the silver standard, which is the political loser accepts the process as fair and accurate. It was a tough call. I would have made a different call, but they had to make it, and it was a reasonable process. So that's critical to move forward in the conflict resolution. And in order to do that, you have to have a step in your portfolio process that almost nobody does, which I call calibration. So it's all about getting, in an evaluation, comparability is more important than accuracy. I'm going to say that again. Comparability is more important than accuracy. And most organizations, when faced with questions about the data, sharpen their pencils and try to make it more accurate. It's actually the wrong direction to go. So the calibration step, one way to do this is just peer review. You just put all the data out there. And you say, whoa, this is our best thinking on all this stuff. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Is that one really bigger than this one? And what would make it? And I'm astonished. And people don't put faith in people. But I'm astonished how much you can get agreement on the facts of the matter, particularly if you include uncertainty, because the answer is we don't know. But how much do we not know? Is there these big differences or small differences? So there's a trap of accuracy. And as an example here, for this particular thing, here's the sort of thing you do. You can see the pearl, bread and butter have high probabilities. The oyster and the white elephant have low probabilities there, the upper left one. And then on size, pearl, oyster are big ranges of uncertainty, but man, they got some upside, and bread and butters and white elephants are small. You know, is that right, more or less? And just the kind of simple answer to that is profound on your organization's ability to make choices. Yeah?
So what about if you do all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He'll turn it on. Yeah.
So what if
He's got to, yeah.
Okay, so what if you do all of this and you put the data out there
Yeah.
and you just can't get the decision making? And then it becomes a conversation around, well, is this really the right measure of success? Shouldn't we look at this, this, and this, right? It almost feels like it's a way that people avoid making decisions. How
Yes.
have you faced that, and how do you
Absolutely.
combat that? Thanks.
So, yeah. We'll just leave this here. So I think I'll answer a little bit now, but actually we're going to unpack this question quite a bit. But here's where it lies, is people make a mistake that the data tells them what to do. The data doesn't tell you what to do. The data empowers you to make the choices you want to make. And this is going to sound a little weird, but the reason to do the evaluation is to take the detail off the table. See, if I have a project and people say this one's worth a lot and this one's worth a little, I don't have to argue that anymore. Now the question is, what do I want to do? Do I want a fund that's worth a lot, or do I want a fund that's worth a little? Now, why would I ever want a fund that's worth a little, you might say? Well, that's what human judgment's actually all about, is if it was as simple as just doing the things that were the most valuable, then what are the executives paid for? It's like, well, maybe there's a relationship. You can't, maybe say this another way, you can't model everything. So model kind of the core of it and tee it up as a free decision for the executives. You follow me? And I find this simple idea, it's transformational power. People are afraid of portfolio process because they think they're going to be a slave to what the data says. And so they invent all this crap that just distracts you from the core issue. Okay? But we'll talk more about this. So here's another dilemma. Who liked the oysters? You guys like oysters? Who liked the bread and butters? You guys like some bread and butters? Okay, so how do you balance the oysters and the bread and butters, right? They have the same value. So what does that tell you?
The probability of the outcome is the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one way to look at this is the risk-return trade-off method. Right? This is sort of standard financial theory. And it basically says that given two things of equal value, pick the safer one. And that would say do the bread and butter. That would sort of be your standard MBA answer to this question. And this idea is prevalent in organizations. Don't take risks, take the safe shots, and so on. But I think it's a lot more than that. So let me put this up into a whole strategy kind of thing. So I have the bread and butter strategy, which is the pearl and 4 bread and butters, and the oyster strategy, which is the pearl and the 4 oysters. And which is better? So you look at the expected value, they're both 18, so that doesn't tell you. What's the downside risk? So what's the chance of getting less than 10 points? So it's 15% for the bread and butter. It's 30% for the oyster strategy. What's the upside potential? Remember, you guys want to win competitively, right? So I just picked a high number, 25%, 25 points. You got a 5% with the bread and butter and a 20% chance with the oyster strategy. So why would anybody in their right mind ever take a 30% chance of losing versus a 15% chance of losing? And that's because what does winning mean? So I used to referee soccer for my 8-year-old son. And kids soccer is an everybody gets a trophy game. So play it safe, right? Everybody's going to get a trophy. But this other side has 2 Olympic-level athletes one of whom will win and take the glory, and the other which will be forgotten. So which game are you playing? See, people make the assumption that a failed project is a failed company. It might be that a lot of winning projects are a failed company. So how important is winning actually to your company? This is the critical strategic question, because a safe strategy gives you the illusion of safety, but it might actually be the riskiest strategy for the company. And I think this is very common. So in particular, here's a graph, but I'll just say it here. Your chance of coming in number one is way higher with the oyster strategy, no matter what anybody else does. Okay, so that's the way it works. Yeah.
Is there a time aspect also kind of baked into this?
Yeah. I should be faster than mics.
How about the time and resources? Is it baked into the overall investment dollars and the return? I guess return,
Yeah.
you get the return from the market.
Yeah.
But resources, use of resources and time, you tie all these resources and time. If you're gonna win the same, like the expected value of return is about the same.
Yeah.
You wanna be, using your machine. Yeah, you want to put less mileage on your car, right?
Yes, yeah.
If you have the same
Yeah, yeah.
return, so you want to be using your resources
Absolutely.
in a less circular way. Is that part of that strategy, or?
Well,
is
yeah,
how do we
absolutely. It
judge
would
that?
be. That the subtleties. I mean, in this game, each die is worth $1. I mean, because they're just the same, right? So real projects have different costs and different resource loads.
Right.
And we're just going to roll dice, so there isn't really a time dimension. Although I'm going to come back to time. There is a time dimension, sort of.
Okay.
But you need to consider those things. So they're great points. Yeah, thank you. Just put it on the table. We'll pass them around as it goes. So decisions. A little bit back to your question over there. The question of decisions isn't what's the right portfolio. The question is what future you want to create. Because executives are actors in the creation of the future. And I think we have a problem of executives won't step up to decision making. They want to get all the safe data. They want to be safe. They want to make the right defensible decision. And they're basically abdicating their captains. They're captains of the ship, right? They've got to be the captain. Tell us where we're, And this involves real human choice and real human trade-offs. So what is the future you want to create? That looks like prioritization. That looks like balance. And many companies find when they do this that they actually need to refine their strategy, because while they have this strategic dream, the portfolio won't actually reasonably deliver. And so what do you do about that is an important part of the question. But that's up to you next. So I'm going to leave you with decision making. Dilbert always gives great practical advice. It's easy to create a strategy. Write down everything you do, preceded by the phrase, increase our market share by. What if we change what we do? Call me and I'll sell you some more valuable advice. So there's Dilbert on making decisions. So the next up is for you to make decisions, a few mechanical points. If I may borrow one of these things. Okay, so mechanically what you need to do is pick 5 projects, put them in the box, close the box. There will be an empty hole. Take the unused projects, put them in the bag. We're going to be rolling dice. We've got to keep it tidy. I've had a lot of experience with this. Get the unused projects in the bag, put them together, and I'll know you're ready. We're going to pass out a score sheet. Do not roll until instructed, but if you finish this quickly, come up with a team name. You don't have to go with what you went for before. You can choose again. The team, can you guys see up there? I want to get your strategy and your team name.
All right, you guys ready?
And we'll just start here. Ralph's going to run the mic. That's
Okay.
Ralph Morales, a colleague of mine there. So,
Come up with a team name, or I assign one to you. Something like Funky Monkeys or something like that. Your
Okay.
team name?
The Winning Oysters.
Winning Oysters. All right. What was your guys' strategy?
You can't tell by your name. The oyster strategy.
Okay.
so that's 140, right?
140. That's what you did?
Okay, and why did you choose that? Just what's your thinking?
We are taking the risk side of looking for the greater reward. So,
Okay.
yeah, we like chocolate.
All right. Lead like chocolate. How about
All right.
team 2?
All right. What's your guys' team name?
We need more oysters.
Oh, okay. And what was your strategy? I think it's probably self-evident.
No, it was 1 on pearl, 2 on oysters, 2 on bread and butter. Balanced strategy.
Strategy.
Balanced
Okay.
strategy.
All right.
Did you really deliberately balance, or was that a compromise? Okay, deliberately balanced.
Okay.
All right, team
Next
3.
team. All right, team 3. What do you guys? What is your team name?
So our team name is Spaceballs,
Nice. Going plaid.
and also got a balanced strategy. So we got 1, 2, and 2.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to scoot around the back. What about you guys? What's your team name?
Risky business.
I like it. All right. What was your strategy here?
Go big or go home. All oysters and the pearl.
All oysters and a pearl. All right. Risky business. How about you guys?
We're the black elephants, and we had 1 pearl, 3 oysters, and 1 bread and butter. So semi-aggressive,
And what was your thinking there?
hedging our bets a little bit.
Hedging your bets.
Yeah.
So sometimes I call it the chicken strategy. We want to do the oysters, but we're a little afraid of going all in, right?
Well,
That was
it's
with-
surf and turf. It's just
Surf
a
and
different
turf,
style.
Yeah. Well, without being too despair, I mean, the reality is a company, to his point about timeline, sometimes you do need bread and butters because you've got to fill things in multiple time frames. And so there's some reality to that for real organizations. Okay.
Okay. Next up, what do we got?
Dragon team, 3 oysters, 1 pearl, and 1 bread and butter.
Okay. And what was your thesis?
He wanted a bread and butter.
He wanted a bread and butter.
The compromise strategy.
Yeah, all right, compromise. I like it. All right. Okay, these guys are pretty sharp. What's your guys' team name?
The elite entrepreneurs.
Okay, elite entrepreneurs. All right, and what was your strategy?
Just to go all in, high value.
Okay, you're going all in, huh? All right, so you went what? Like 1 white elephant and
4 oyster.
1 pearl full oysters, okay? All right. And they like chocolate too, all right? How about you guys?
So we're the oysters and crackers team, and we chose the 1-3-1 approach.
1-3-1, all right? And I'm moving up to the front. Okay, you guys got a team name?
Bet more. Our strategy is high risk, high reward. We are going with 1 pearl and 4 oysters.
Right. 1-4-0. I think I got 1 team left, right? All right.
So we called ourselves the unexpected champions. And our portfolio strategy is I'm kind of feeling lucky. So we had the 1 pearl, 3 oysters, and 1 bread and butter.
All right.
Okay, so let me ask a kind of question. Are these strategies the same or different than you would do in your company? Find someone to comment.
Okay,
if you would.
okay. Who's same? Who said this is the same as my company? Where's those elite? Where's the ballers? Where's the people who went like all oyster? So is that the same thing you do at your company? Wait, hold on. Where's a match between the strategy and what your company does? Oh, David, nobody here bet like their company bet.
And why
Hold
not?
on. Did you say yes or? Okay.
We're also the disruptive growth team in the company. So we would probably invest in 1 bread and butter, but the rest would be aggressive.
Okay.
So why, if you're different, most people are different, why are you different? Why wouldn't you do this like your company does? There is time, yeah. Okay, so fair enough. We got there and we got one up here too. Yeah, go ahead.
I think part of it is we have to reinvest, so you
Yeah.
have to be have a little higher probability.
Yeah, fair
Part
enough.
of it is we've existed for a while,
Uh-huh.
so I'm not a startup.
Yeah.
But when we first started, we took this strategy. Everything was go
okay.
shoot for the moon. Yeah.
Okay. So different life cycles. Yep.
Risk profile changed.
I have a comment as well.
Okay. We need more mics. There's a second mic.
I think there's one
I've
over
lost
there.
it.
So what I was going to mention is that our company really values the near-term dollar, the known, more than the future dollar, and so these big bets, they're not generally in the same year, right? We have
That's
an
right.
annual cycle, and so there's that commitment to your shareholders that you're going to make a profit, and so we can't really ever go after it. So it is the timing question,
Yeah.
really kind of reframed, but that's why I think we have a tendency. It's always you like the near-term dollar much more than the future dollar.
Sure. So what that means is you're a widows and orphans company, right? You're going to have year-on-year increasing dividends.
Right.
I'm not a growth company. Those can be great businesses. You can make a lot of money. How many of you want to be a widows and orphans company? How many are here because you want to be a growth company? Say it the other way. How many are here because you want your company to be a growth company? Okay. So for those of you who are in like this, that's perfect. And I really mean that with no judgment. You can make a lot of money doing that. Yeah. Okay. Over here. Yes, please.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say too is, as I was thinking about this, we were talking about it over here. Your bread and butter is like your base, right? If I think about it, it's line extensions on base businesses that are your core business.
Sure.
If you start innovating really far away from your base business, right, you start to lose sight of your core and kind of what makes up the biggest part of your P&L. And when you think about, right, so I'm at Tyson, so we're talking about retail channel, you can only do so much incremental to the shelf there's only so much shelf space. There's only so much space to go. And if you end up innovating into something that actually is decreative to your base business on margin and that, you could actually end up upending yourself,
Sure.
So as I thought about this a little bit more too, I'm like, well, if I think about how, it happens in real life, it's probably a little more skewed toward that bread and butter, and it's more of that conservative play and kind
Fair
of
enough.
the external market conditions
Yeah,
too.
well, those are great reasons. I mean, I think real companies have to do bread and butters for a lot of good reasons. The one didn't come up, which was quite interesting. A lot of people say, my company couldn't possibly afford the risk, and this is only $5. Anybody think that? So they were willing to be a little more risky because it's only $5 at stake? So I think this is a common logic, and it's actually, that logic would bring you to the opposite conclusion. If you think of the size of your company and the size of the bets actually being made, they're less than $5 to the company. They are tiny, insignificant bets. And the company isn't treating them like probes or experiments. They're treating them like, oh my God, I have to make every penny work. They should be more cavalier than you would be with $5, and they're not. This is not all companies, but many companies are this way, and often for reasons like what you were saying. It's sort of built into the culture, or the assumption is we've got to just always deliver. So there's a kind of risk attitude issue as well. It's pretty common.
Well, this is, I think, in many ways like a hedge fund, right?
Yeah.
I could lose it all.
Yeah.
I guess my comment is kind of maybe this is more like a hedge fund, right? I can lose it all. I'm willing to lose it all, but I really want a big payout. So if I'm going to bet, on the probability that a hurricane is going to wipe out an area, I'm willing to take that and roll it and roll it and roll it. When I'm wrong, I lose it all. But, if I'm right, got big upside,
Yeah.
right?
All right, so let's move to the dice, but I'm going to surprise you here. You've all got your things together. This is your funded box. Please leave it closed. We're not going to deal with these. Turn it over. You will see there's a key for how to interpret the die rolls. I'm going to give you an experience you will never have in your career. What happened to all the projects that failed? So you'll see on your score sheet on the left side, it says unfunded projects. We're going to start with those. Now, just a little record keeping here. Open up your project. The type is just this little key. Is it bread and butter? Is it oyster? Just record the kind of project. Roll the dice. You can roll them at the same time. You can roll them sequentially. Here's the key. If it succeeds, put down an S. If it fails, put down an F. I don't care what the number is. I only want to know if it succeeded or failed. If it failed, write 0 in the value column. Do not multiply, do not add, do not do any other creative mathematics you might do. If it failed, it's 0. If it succeeded, just write whatever the colored die says. and then you're going to roll them all, add up the total number of successes, and add up the total number of points you get. Okay, so go. And I got Ralph to help, and I'll wander around to help. And I think, Henry, if you want to help. Funded portfolio. The box stays closed. He does. All right, so just to be clear, please keep the box closed. Do not roll the funded projects yet. We're going to look at the unfunded projects first. And Ralph, if you could help with the mic running here.
Yep. Okay, let's see how the anti-portfolio did. How about you guys? What was the total number of successes and the value?
So total successes was 3 and value was 7. So my partner pointed out we wouldn't have even made our $5 back.
Oh, okay. So you're feeling good about the anti-portfolio being potentially better than the actual portfolio. How about over here?
3 out of 5 successes and value of 13.
Okay, so this would have been in the money portfolio. You passed up. Oh, interesting. Okay, how about you guys?
1 and 5.
I had a 1 and a 5. Okay, next.
A 1 and a 4.
Oh, okay, things are getting grim. How about over here?
We had 3 successes and 15.
15. Woo. Okay, how about this team? We got dragons.
3 and 9.
3 and 9. Okay, and over here, 3 and 8. Okay, and up here, 3 and 8. Vincent, how about your guys' team? How did you do on the anti-folio? 4 successes, 13 value points. Okay. And over here, 2 successes and a value of 5. Okay. So I'm kind of feeling lucky. Not bad.
Okay, the black elephants. Black elephants got 15 points, right? How big was your largest success? Yeah, how big was the largest one? 6? You got 6. Anybody get something scoring more than 6 in any of this rolls? Okay, so 6. you guys, that's a pretty good project, right? You had one project that's a lot of that value. And they got it twice, right? They got it twice. So you're telling me that you went and canceled a really good project, and then the poor innovator went underground.
Chad went underground.
Chad went underground. Okay, but Chad's our innovator here, and kept it going even though you told him to stop. And then you killed it again. They got a little more support, and they kept it going. And now they made it a success. It's the backbone of the business. What idiot kind of managers are you?
Right. Chad and Andy are like...
Exactly. How can we describe how exactly idiotic they are? I mean, Has anybody ever heard this story before? Yeah. So it's a very common story. I call this the myth of R&D. Sometimes people say you can't manage it. They'll say something like that. What do people mean? What do they try to accomplish when they use this argument? So they're going to say, you want to cancel my project? Yeah, don't cancel me. This is a sleeper project. It's going to be great, right? And what happens if management buys this story? What actually happens to your portfolio if this is a strong argument? I attract more of them, and therefore?
You become a lot of small projects that I guess don't have a lot of upside, right?
Yeah, well, they happen to be a bread and butter, but it could have been an oyster too. It's more commonly argued with oyster projects, in my experience. So this dynamic represents a sort of fear of missing out, right? The fear is what might have happened. And the foundation story of companies like W.O. Gore and Associates are actually quite famous. There are many, right? Those idiots at DuPont, no offense to my current friends, couldn't deal with us, so we left the company, made the startup, and it's based on a false assumption that you can pick the winners. Okay?
What about if your culture is such that you intentionally...
Come on, Mike.
What if your culture is intentionally created so that people are working on skunkworks, and actually when skunkworks happens, the company still celebrates it because they talk about their culture as one of innovation in all pockets. So in some cases, if you're managing R&D, it feels rogue, but in other places, it's this idea that innovation happens everywhere.
Yeah, so I would make a distinction between the kind of skunkworks style, right? The skunkworks plant was an R&D plant co-located with manufacturing, and they had all these crazy things going on. They knew they were investing money in risking projects, and they separated it from the organization so that it could do its own thing. It was like an early version of the ambidextrous organization. We need a place for the wild and wonderful to be wild and wonderful. So that's like an oyster farm,
No,
right?
I'm talking about like you have a
Underground.
business unit that has some R&D funding, and they just decide they're going to go and do something that maybe doesn't live in the R&D portfolio.
Well, so that certainly happens. And your point is that you think this is a good idea?
Well, I'm just wondering because sometimes if you were to say no, innovation lives within the R&D organization, then in essence you might be killing seed ideas that are happening. And so I guess there's an argument for both, because on one side, if you're running the R&D team, you want to make sure your funding is appropriate and you know what you're investing in. But then there's also these weird little things that kind of come out of the business units, and you don't want to kill ideas as well.
So let me make a couple comments. You talked about sort of the early stage. You can just put it on the table. We're going to sort of pass them around. In my view, portfolios are typically more serious investments by the time they get to this kind of framework. So there's certainly a lot of scouting that needs to go on that is even wilder and wonderful, and I think you don't want to be too heavyweight. So if that's the point you're making, absolutely, and that would be sort of pre the portfolio in a way, right? To the extent that they're very serious investments, consuming a lot of resources, and they're really rogue, you've set up a very dangerous situation because I don't know how to put this,
there's information asymmetry, right?
Yeah,
they promote the ones that succeeded, but what happened to the ones that didn't succeed that were never known about?
Yeah. So it's a great question.
But were you talking about like 3M encouraging people to spend 20% of their time on?
Some companies, 3M is probably the most famous of encouraging people to spend 20% of their time on bootleg projects, and that, I think, is more in the scouting arena. And if something really comes of it, chances are you're going to need more resources to really follow it through. So that's probably what the two of you are talking about. One is scouting, and there are many ways to go after scouting. You can formalize it because you got some people that are really good at it, or you can spread it out and diffuse it through the organization, saying, hey, everybody can have a great idea sometime, or there are lots of ways of doing that, I think.
Great question. Thank you. So where I was going with this is a assumption people make about portfolios, that they can somehow pick the winners. And I would like to say you can't pick the winners. And the belief that you can pick the winners is quite dangerous. And because it makes you hold on to stuff you shouldn't hold on to, because you're afraid of what would have happened. And the consequence of that is a crowded portfolio, usually, right? If everyone comes to me and they learn that I am susceptible to the, oh, what could have been argument, then I fund everything. And what happens is, for the fear of letting something go, I actually wound everything. You see? If I wound everything, then I don't have to face this actual choice, but I don't actually have a winning portfolio either. And I think this is so epic. I'm going to show you a cartoon about this. Where's my... Okay, here it is. It's the epic struggle. And this is like, some rejected projects would have succeeded. Here's the mighty struggle with the Minotaur. And who is it with the Minotaur? Theseus, maybe? I don't know who knows their Greek mythology. But I'd sure like to kill this project, but what if I were to succeed? And so the consequence is a lot of projects that probably shouldn't be done in many, many portfolios. Now let me ask you, are you guys familiar with this effect? I mean, is this, yeah? You guys, a project probably shouldn't be done? Okay, is it a big problem or a small problem?
I think it can be a debilitating problem, too.
A debilitating, well, I mean, you need a mic, right? Okay, so he says it can be a debilitating problem.
Yeah, I don't know if I have more to add, but I think it can be, ultimately a debilitating problem because, by kind of spreading yourself really thin and being afraid to kill anything, you end up never stacking your resources and kind of over-committing to the things that are likely to succeed, right? It's, what do they call it? Peanut butter, right? You just
yes,
spread
the peanut
it thin.
butter, right.
So.
Good. So just do an estimate. In your portfolio, what fraction of the resources do you think are going into stuff that probably doesn't really need to be done, but is, because of an argument like this, is somehow carrying on? Just some come to mind. Shout it out. What do you think your number is?
20%.
Say again?
20%.
20%. I hear a 20%. Anyone got a different number? 35%. I got a 30. I got a 5. Okay, so let me tell you a story about the place where the pressure of failure, of this kind of embarrassment factor, is huge. This is Hollywood. I worked in Hollywood for a while, and they have a whole process called R&D. I worked with Sony Pictures, and they spend a couple $1 billion a year doing R&D, which means buying rights to script, having writers work on them, shooting little treatments, and it's a huge process. And finally, something gets green-lighted. They look at 10,000 scripts a year, and they make 12 movies every year. And they're spending a couple $1 billion doing this. And the embarrassment factor is huge, because there are 2 programs in the world that have global audiences. They are World Cup and Oscars. So those have true world multi-billion person audiences. And if you go to the Oscars, your nightmare scenario is a gorgeous actress gets up, having won Best Whatever, and says, I want to thank my friends at TriStar for believing in me after those bastards at Columbia Pictures turned me down, and the camera sweeps across the audience to you. For 2 billion people to see you in your embarrassment, right? I mean, they're terrified of this. So I worked with a guy, Mel Harris. He was one of the smartest executives I've met, and he said, I was worried about this problem. So what I did is one year I cut my budget in half. So he took $1 billion out of his spending budget. I mean, think of the magnitude of that. And imagine the organizational response, tearing of hair, gnashing of teeth. I mean, it was horrible. He made it stick. He got more better movies. He's like, yeah, they had so much money, they were taking people out to lunch too much. So a couple years later, he says, well, that worked pretty well. I'm going to try again. He cut it in half again. Great gnashing of teeth. Productivity dropped. He's like, oops, went too far. So he brought it back up again. So his estimate is 50%. My experience looking at portfolios is 30 to 60% is pretty reasonable. To like how much stuff probably just doesn't need to get done. Average wounding on a project, 40 to 60%. I mean, this is so big you can drive a truck through it, in my experience. And the emphasis on project management system hasn't done us a service, because what that system tries to do is jam more stuff through. And that's certainly a nice habit, but if it becomes a substitute for your decision making, you get stuff moving. And
Can I just take you off?
So
Yeah.
we'll take you off script for
Okay.
just a moment.
It's all off.
So we probably all have a similar problem where we're trying to jam enough work to keep people busy all the time. So how do you handle the fresh arrival, right? That kind of that new project that comes in, kind of against the fact that the machines, the people, right? They're always busy.
Yeah. So I don't have a great answer for you. So how do you deal with people the need to keep everybody busy? And I think I would start with the need to keep everybody busy as a kind of assumption. But I don't have a great answer. Maybe some of you do. I think that what you point to, though, is when innovation starts to work, it starts to consume resources rapidly. And if you don't follow it, you're killing it. So you might as well not do it in the first place. So you need some way to be able to ramp up. And we have some suggestions over here. Yes, please.
I mean, it may be provocative, but do you have too many people? Because I can tell you, I don't have enough people to do all the stuff that we're doing, but I can tell you that I know we're doing things. We need to cut back on what we're doing, and we're not doing highly valuable stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder, do you have too many resources? Are they not focused in the right way? Because I've not encountered that in a really long time.
Yeah. I would also, that reminds me of a comment. I have found, though, when you cancel this stuff, get it off your plate, people fuss and they fight and they gnash their teeth. But actually, once they're through it, they're liberated. They are liberated. I mean, people want to be innovative. They want to focus. They want to do all this. And it's like just a breakthrough for a lot of people. Then they can actually focus. And I think people appreciate that. Looks like Henry has a point.
Yeah, I think one of the questions is, how big is the magnitude? If you had your pipeline collapse and you're a pharma company or an ag company, and all of a sudden you have 50% of your people that really don't have productive projects to work on, that's a different problem than if you have 10%. And one of the things that we're at least trying to do is more work farming oysters, so more scouting work, and recognize, I told you this morning that 80 to 90% of the scouting that we do ends up in failures, and you saw yesterday, 1,000 ideas comes down to 2 or 3 winners. So the fact is, you need to do a lot of that in order to generate a bench. And so if you really have a few extra people, that might be a productive avenue to go, because the other thing that keeps people from moving off of bad projects is the fear of, well, okay, am I going to lose my job if my project dies? What am I going to work on next? And on the other hand, if they can see a rich bench of projects just waiting, then I think you have a team that will celebrate killing something that should be killed.
Great discussion. Any more points? Yep.
So it continues to be kind of people being hurt by the project not going forward, right? But what if it is when it's the executive's idea in the first place? We're talking about this as in that they're the actors in this, but if their idea is a white elephant idea, but they're not able to understand it is or don't believe it is, and they believe it's the oyster, I guess, how do you, in, I guess, SmartOrg's approach, handle those situations when it's not necessarily a project driven up, it's a idea or project started higher?
So I speak the truth to power. I mean, that's part of why there's a lot of technical things I help companies. We have software, but part of the role I personally play sometimes is to speak the truth. I got enough gray hair to be able to do that. So that might be a private conversation, or it might be more public. But people don't always come along. And what do you do, right? I mean, I think that's part of it. The other side, though, is the freedom of the executive to create. And if for whatever secret reason they want to fund a white elephant, I've actually found it way more effective for them to say, I'm funding the white elephant, I have my reasons. I understand that by these metrics it's not a good project, and I am making that choice. When they say that, it stops a lot of dysfunctional behavior, because people try to well, they don't understand and they don't promote, and they try to add metrics or they make it more complicated, when fundamentally at the end of the day it's their choice, right? So make your choice and be clear about it, and you don't actually need to justify it to anybody. So let them choose. And then maybe next time they'll choose different, or maybe they're right. Maybe there's a deep play running. I don't know. Some people have a lot of very interesting things going on. They can't share that broadly, right? So, but the ability to say yes to something that doesn't look good is actually more powerful than trying to dress up something that looks bad, because then when you choose it, everybody knows it's dressed up and nobody believes it. But if you say, yeah, I'm doing it anyway, that's fine. You just cut through so much bullshit. So that's helpful. Okay, so let's go to the moment you've been waiting for, which is let's roll. Oh, okay, he's going to do a drum roll or something. Let's roll your successful projects. So now you can open your box.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah.
All right. This is the one that counts. Your team disappeared. Your team disappeared.
You can get Eddie Van Halen. That's pretty good. Do you know if there's any water around?
Yeah, you can take them out of the box.
Yeah, but
and
you
roll 'em.
probably should stay, unless it's within 30 feet.
They're kind of hard to roll inside the box, but yeah.
It's okay.
All right.
How'd your oyster go?
If your oyster or your pearl pans out, you got to say woohoo! Black
What?
guys, one is fail.
You did it on one. But you want to win, right? So keep going.
Yeah, he might need another set of hands to roll the dice.
Oh man.
See, I heard a
that's
yes.
The pearl, so that's a
that
success.
means oyster panned out.
An 11.
Oh, big money, big prizes.
Oh, if that's your. Oh, but that's a failure, right?
That's a 9. Yeah, the dot goes near the bottom. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I stand corrected.
That's a 6 or a 9?
That's a 6.
Right. You getting there? Okay. You had one.
I switched too quickly. Thank you for the water.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Everybody ready?
We're done. Everybody's finished their portfolio. The results are in. Annual performance reviews.
Yes.
All right. We got 1s and 5s. We're going to be ranking everybody.
Oh my God.
Can't predict.
No, you can't.
Oh. Not bad.
Oh man. Uh-oh. Sorry. Okay,
Okay. We ready? Everybody done?
everybody done? Did anybody have their pearl fail? Who had their pearl fail? You guys, anybody have a pearl fail? Wow, this has got to
Okay.
be a first in this
Okay.
group
Yeah,
this
that-
size.
that
Yay!
is- yeah.
So let's just imagine you had the pearl fail. Yeah, what? That's not good, right?
Not good.
What happens to the person in charge of the pearl when the pearl fails?
Wait, why are you firing
Yeah.
the person that failed the pearl?
So I have
Why
a
you doing that?
cartoon for this. As this is your proposal, Cosgrove, its failure could mean the end of your career. I think, however, that's an acceptable risk. So companies have this way of rewarding success, which effectively transfers corporate risk to the individual. Right? And so what do people do when they're faced with this prospect? What do they actually do if you're a project leader and you're faced with this kind of possibility? You run away? Okay. Run away.
You choose projects with high probability of success.
You choose projects with high probability of success. You lower your numbers, right? In fact, you lower your aspirations.
Right.
So I call this the flight of mediocrity. As soon as this happens to somebody the first time, they aim lower. And what you end up with is a portfolio cluttered with terrible small ideas because fear has suppressed it all. I have seen a lot of great ideas hidden inside tiny little projects. You guys you know what I'm talking about? The project can't possibly get anywhere near its objectives. But the dream is beautiful. Anyone have this? Nobody has it? So this is a consequence of the fear in the system, right? So you've got to step up a little bit to have a system that doesn't celebrate success quite so much. A little bit, I think Henry had a good suggestion. If you can see the deep bench, you want to move on. It's like, next. That's the attitude you want to cultivate. But in this group, nobody had their pearls fail, so go team. So let's get the statistics.
All right, here we go. First team up.
Oh, wait, I've got to get it turned over here.
Winning oysters, survey says.
We had 3 successes for a total of 33 points.
33.
Woo!
Boom. Boom. Congrats. All right, next up, we need more oysters.
We had 2 successes for 6 points.
2 successes for 6 points.
Well, thanks for playing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, need more oysters, right?
We had 1 success for 10 points.
1 success, 10 points.
That must have been a nerve-wracking roll.
All right, how about over here?
3 successes, 29.
3 successes, 29 points. Okay. All right, over here?
We had 3 successes for 17 points.
Okay, 317. All right, how are we doing over here?
We had 3 successes for 30 points.
3 for 30. Okay, it's impressive. First team set the bar really high.
1 success for 17 points.
Okay, and that was your pearl, right? Whew, okay. Imagine if his pearl wouldn't have come true. All right, what do you guys got? Oh, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. 1 success, 3 points, and that was the pearl. Okay,
Thanks for
it's a
playing.
very small pearl. Slightly larger than a grain of sand. Okay, so can you guys see the Excel spreadsheet? He's going to sum it up.
We have 2 more, right?
We have 2 more, that's right. All right, hold on. Over here, what do we got?
We have 2 successes for 26.
2 for 26. Okay. All right. Now these ladies right here, I'm feeling kind of lucky. The unexpected champions. First off, they had 3 successes. The first digit is a 3. And the next digit. Now you guys did 3 oysters, a bread and butter, and a pearl. And the second digit is a 1.
Oh! Okay,
All right.
Let's take a look at these numbers here. Can you guys see that? What I've done is I've totaled them up. This is the unfunded portfolio. On average, it's 2.6 successes and 8.7 points. The funded portfolio is 2.2 successes and 20.2 points. And you can see all the entries there. So what do you guys make of those statistics? What do you notice about this?
We worked on the right projects.
You worked on the right projects, right? You see that the decisions you made actually improved the portfolio, right? So that's the 8.7 versus the 20.2. So in spite of having let a lot go, good portfolio decisions actually improve the results. And you probably couldn't have predicted which projects would have succeeded, right? So in spite of all that uncertainty, by the way, do you think this game has more uncertainty or less uncertainty than the real world? Less uncertainty than the real world, okay? All right.
So I was looking at the oyster crackers.
Yeah.
They did their unfunded projects did better than their
Yeah.
funded projects.
Yeah.
Oyster crackers.
The oyster crackers, yes. The unfunded. They had
Yeah.
a bad year,
Sorry.
right?
Had a bad year. Yeah, down.
Do you want to?
Those exchange rates, currencies.
Yeah, you know, if you were different divisions, though, in a company, it would balance out over time, right? You'd be a winner sometime and a loser sometimes, and it would be better. Yeah. What? Okay, comment over here.
The over-indexing on the oysters and pearls does pay off when you generally.
The oysters and what? So just what do you mean by?
Over-indexing on
Yep.
oysters and pearls,
Yeah.
and the selection did deliver stronger results than
The portfolio.
than
Yeah.
the balanced view of bread and butter and oysters.
Yeah. The oysters are delivering. I'll show you more about that in a moment, but let's keep going. Yeah, we got a couple comments. There's one over here and one over there. So 2 over here now.
Okay, the unfunded, I believe the success rate was higher on the unfunded, even though return was less. So
I'm glad somebody noticed that.
Yeah.
Right? The unfunded portfolio has a higher success rate, but creates less value. That is not an anomaly. Or said another way, the winning portfolio has a lower success rate, but creates more value. Now, how could that possibly be? It's the size of the opportunity, right? And we're going to talk about the option value of these things, so this will get a little more interesting. But I want to point that out, and I want to emphasize, like, most businesses essentially celebrate the success. That is how many parties the team experiences because they've accomplished a milestone. And it creates all the incentives to maximize the success as opposed to the value, right? What happens if your organization has that sort of built into its framework? People propose bread and butters because they want parties. And that actually reduces your wealth creation, or can. It doesn't always. I don't want to be a little careful about this, but I think that's quite an astonishing result. And it's something if you believe, again, this thing people believe, that a portfolio is a collection of good projects is very incomplete. The portfolio really behaves differently than the projects within it. And this is the best example of it I can find. Yeah? All right, more. Yes, over here.
Yeah, but wouldn't because everybody put their white elephants into the unfunded category, wouldn't that artificially suppress the value?
Yeah,
and,
so that's
inflate the numbers of.
Well, that's one of the reasons that the funded portfolio is doing better, right? I mean, clearly that's part of the story. It's more interesting than that, but that's part of it.
Yep. Now
Yeah.
one more.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when we looked at our unfunded, wasn't that much difference than our funded one.
Uh-huh.
We had pretty much the same success rate, but the value didn't come up as much as we thought. But I don't know. The one thing that it did make me think of is that it might be more important to make decisions and just get started, because the reality is when people try and make the perfect decision and you delay and delay, it's probably more important to get the work started because you really don't know what's going to be the
Indeed.
winners. You know, and then, yeah, I don't know, just the whole idea of the higher success rate, but it creates the less value. It does make me think about, like, the company itself, like, who are they rewarding, right? So I don't know if people talk about the value as much as they talk about the team success,
Right.
you know, and that's an interesting thing to think about.
Great, thank you. I think there was one over here. Did you have one? Okay. Okay, so let's move on a little bit and let's unpack this issue of the oysters seem to be creating a lot of value, but they're pretty risky. And so let me switch my modes again. Okay, we got the cartoon again. So let's talk about what tracking means in a portfolio. And there's certainly a dimension of, people think of project management, milestone tracking, accomplishment review, and all that kind of stuff, and that's good as far as it goes. what usually is missed is the potential for creating options. People don't think of their portfolios in terms of option creation. And I think that's where the action is in portfolio. So you update information with the idea of creating and exercising options, or in Eric's language, do you pivot, punt, or persevere? But the ability to create your own options, to create downstream choices for yourself that might be better, is actually how you access the upside. And this is a different way of looking at it, but tremendously powerful. So just some math for you. I want to point out that this particular metric we've used, the expected value metric, if you start at the beginning of the project here on the left, this is the white elephant again, its value is 0.75. But notice that if it makes it through this first phase, it's 3.5. It's actually a really good project at this point because it's been proved out. So the metric is rising over time as you learn. This is sort of the distinction between the proof point and the milestone accomplishment. You might accomplish something, but it doesn't really change the probabilities very much. There are usually a few critical events that would make you believe or not that this is going to work. And that's the content, the management content of the probability. So notice that this metric rises. And this creates something called real options, or people call it value of information. There are a lot of words for it. I think real options is probably the most prevalent one. But something has option value if you can manage your own decisions in time. So I put you in the worst possible position, which is you choose your projects, then you learn the development results, and then you learn the commercial value. That's actually the most disadvantaged way of playing this. A lot of technical organizations do it this way. They do a lot of development work, and they have something that works, and then they invest heavily in the stuff that works, and they go try to find a market for it. So that's roll the black and white dice, then choose, then roll the colored dice. Companies like Procter & Gamble, a lot of CPG, actually run it the other way. They do all kinds of customer insight work. I mean, endless customer research. And they essentially roll the color die first, then they pick, and then they see if they can engineer an answer to meet that need, right? So this is the CPG way of doing it. This would be complete information. I roll the development die, I roll the color die, and then I pick the ones I like the best. Now this is clearly not very realistic, but has the great advantage that it can be simulated in this game. So we're going to go with this one. And it also represents kind of upper limit to how much you can, what the ultimate value of information is, but you'll see. So look over your whole array, and imagine you're just choosing again from fresh. So knowing everything, pick the 5 projects you would like to pick, and this is going to get a hint at what's available for the option value. Now there's one bonus question on this, which is, so write down the number of successes, write down the value, and then take a second look at it and subtotal the value for the yellow dice. So this is the oyster and the pearls. So you're going to have 2 value numbers. One is all the value, and one is just the value coming from the yellow dice.
So sum all successes. Sum all your successes. Not just 5, all of them.
Pick your 5 best.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pick your 5 best successes. Okay, that's step 1.
Yes, pick your 5 that you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just try it. This shouldn't be too hard.
All right. What'd you guys sum to? 38 value?
How many successes?
5. With a value of
5
38.
successes, 38. And how many of the points came from the yellow dice? That is the oysters or the pearls. Just subtotal that part.
33.
Okay, so of your 38 points, 33 of them came from the yellow die.
Okay.
Right? Okay, next.
Next up, we have the Need More Oysters. And they had 5 successes for 19 points. And the yellow dice represented, that's it, just 2? Just 2. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. And then over here, with perfect information, let's see, it was 2 successes for a value of 15. And then 10 points from yellow. All right? Next up is Risky Business. They had 4 successes for 33 points. And the value from oysters or yellow dice was 29. Okay. Next up is Black Elephants. They had 5 successes, 30 points of value, and 15 from the yellow dice. The Dragons are having computational difficulties using their new smartphone. The Elite Entrepreneurs, 25 total value coming from 4 successes, and 17 was from yellow dice. The Oyster and Crackers team had 4 successes, 11 points of value, and 3 points came from yellow dice. All right, the Bet More, 5 successes, 37 points, and 26 of them came from yellow dice. And the Unexpected Champions, who came so close. I was betting on you guys. 5 successes, 36 points of value, 40 from yellow dice. 30. And let's go back and figure out if they got the app working. Okay, so 5 successes. 5 successes, 39 points of value, and 29 from yellow. All right.
Okay, thank you. So take a look at those numbers there. So what you're seeing in this option portfolio is ultimately you find 4.4 successes for 28.3 points, and almost 19.4 came from yellow dice, which is 70% of the value is coming from those yellow dice. So what do you make of that? Say again, or get a mic? Well, so I'll make a couple points. Notice that you guys made some value by your primary choices, right? The 8.7 went to the 20.2. But the option value is actually a same kind of increment. So if you could add option value into your portfolio, you would increase the value again very substantially. Also note that the value, 70% of the value, comes from the biggest uncertainty. The biggest uncertainty in this game is that yellow die, right? That's where most of the value actually comes from. So most of the time we think of a portfolio as avoiding risk, and I'd like to introduce the idea that you want your portfolio to be risk-seeking, or not risk is the wrong word, sorry, I misspoke. People think of, you want it to be uncertainty-seeking. When people think of uncertainty, they think of risk. What they don't realize is the upside, and the upside is where the action is. So you want to make your portfolio upside-seeking, and it doesn't always work out. But it works out enough to be a massive, massive effect. This is not a subtle effect. Yeah, please.
So can we relate that to market share as well? If we kind of extrapolate this, all of this style of investment, for many years for a company, because I would think that, let's say if this is the total economy, right? 30% comes from low risk investments and 7% of the overall market is high risk investments. And if your company is betting on the, on the high return, little moderate high risk investments, wouldn't that result in higher market share down the road?
Probably. I would maybe think of it slightly differently. So like a lot of you raise your hands that you want to be growth companies, right? Or you need some kind of major renewal in your company. It's not going to come from the bread and butters. You have to be uncertainty seeking in the sense I mean here. This is not about taking ridiculous risks. It's about creating an oyster farm that finds the upsides and exploits them, right? And it's a huge thing. So that's maybe another way of saying your same point, I think.
Another, most of what we've done is all in financial metrics, right? So, and we all care about how many of us are publicly traded companies. So you have stock? Okay. So you probably know what your earnings per share multiple is. Let's keep this simple, right? Probably somewhere between 4 and 7, unless you work at software, and then you get some double digits. The difference between the portfolio you chose and the option portfolio is at least 20% higher.
3:45 is a
right?
Okay, so I got 10
So
minutes. All right.
if you took 20% of your current stock price and or your earnings, increased it by 20, and then multiplied that by 5, would that be material enough to get your executives' attention about the impact that your portfolio could have on share price? We've seen this be as much as 5 to 15% share price. Now, it doesn't manifest instantly because remember, there's uncertainty involved here.
So I'm going to we got 10 minutes left, so I want to head to the finish and then leave any concluding comments to you guys. So this really boils down to what's your strategy. He expressed, this was Joe here, expressed, I think, what I would call the reliable delivery strategy, right? You find things you can do, you succeed at them, you make sure you deliver on your commitments, and you accomplish your deliverables, you build momentum, and it's a great strategy for many circumstances. That might be your corporate strategy, and certainly you have to do that sometimes. There's no doubt. We talked about the timing and the need to. But what I'm talking about is another strategy, the oyster farm strategy, which is you focus on the hardest proof points, you make sure it matters, so that's the white die and the colored die, and you're creating options for yourself. See, you don't really have to roll the dice at once like we did in the simulation. You actually roll them over time. But you've got to be really ruthless about whether or not those colored die are working out. So this idea in the game of there are no shades of gray is probably a good way to think about it if you possibly can, because what kills people is the muddled middle. They sort of make some success, but not really enough. And so they keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. So be a little more decisive. This logic is actually what made Amazon. So here's what Jeff Bezos says. We all know that if you swing for the fences, you're going to strike out a lot, but you're also going to hit some home runs. The difference between baseball and business is that the baseball has a truncated outcome. When you swing, no matter how well you connect with the ball, the most runs you can get is 4. That's if the base is loaded. Usually it's just 1, right? In business, every once in a while, when you step up to the plate, you can score 1,000. Big winners pay for a lot of experiments. That's the oyster farm strategy. It built Amazon. So if you look at kind of what a high-yield pipeline looks like, this is some statistics from Gillette. I think it's a study from the late 90s, perhaps, but it's simple, so I like it. 1,000 serious ideas, 100 developed and tried, 10 taken to scale, 3 commercialized, 1 great success. By the way, that's 2 in-market failures if you're keeping track. And that's kind of what it takes to come up with great products. So this is a kind of a compression ratio for driving options. And I find companies typically fall into, if I make a distinction here, the straw or the bucket. These are the, if you don't think about the optionality very well, you end up one of these. So the left is the straw. You make strategic decisions early. You commit to projects, not very many of them. And then you work really hard to make those work. And the problem is that you don't get enough innovation out of it. And then there's the bucket, where you fund everything because you can't decide, and you let all the experiments go to the very end, and then you end up with this giant logjam at commercialization usually, and some amazing things drip out, but it's just way too expensive. Right? I think a great example of this is actually the US Air Force, who every 20 years or so does one new Joint Strike Fighter, and that's the bottleneck. So, and that's a consequence of poor decision making, and it results to significant loss in one way or the other. So just as a kind of forced choice question, I know everybody's got some kind of curve, but if you had to decide for yourself, are you more like a straw or are you more like a bucket? So forced choice, I know you're in the middle. Who feels they're more on the straw side of things with their portfolio? Okay, so that's a third maybe or a half. And who thinks they're more on the bucket side of things? Kind of a similar number.
Yep.
So there's a lot of room here if you think about your portfolio a little differently. So what this boils down to is 3 approaches to improving your portfolio. If you go back to the grid, the small projects, a lot of them, even the bread and butters, probably just don't need to be done. They're essentially clutter. They're distracting. The opportunity cost of those projects is huge, even if the cost of them is low, because they take attention away from the big possibilities. And some of those might be white elephants, and some of them might be bread and butters, but the insignificant stuff mostly doesn't need to be done. If you have white elephants, they may actually be good ideas. They're just not projectized that way. So figure out how to drive the upside. Figure out how to get visibility to the upside. I'd argue across your whole portfolio, but so improve your white elephants. And then get your oyster farm and focus on proof. What is the evidence that really tells you on that black and white die that this is going to be a winner or not? And build your plans around the proof, not around the steps in the stage gate. Now, you need to do the steps, but don't start there. Start with the proof. What do you really need to, that's very much what Eric Ries is saying, right? Start with the things you really need to understand, and then work backwards. So those are 3 approaches to improving your portfolio. The impact, I think, can be huge. And I see it in terms of companies that have lackluster growth, or just clutter, or conflict, financial caution conflicting with innovative vision. So if you can get these things going, you can actually bring people together, make better choices, get finance actually on the same page as the rest of the organization, which unleashes a lot of horsepower. So that's some of my findings. And just to kind of sum up the game, things to remember: you can't pick winning projects, but you can pick good portfolios. Many forces are conspiring to create mediocrity in your portfolio. If you're going to take a long shot, do an oyster farm, do a lot of them, because they're probably going to fail. So the idea of doing one innovative project is a disaster idea. You need a strategy around it. And create and capture option value. In particular, greater uncertainty is greater value. So that's my kind of sum up. So we have 5 minutes for discussion, I think. Yes, please.
Just curious, so like we've gone through some numbers here. Like, do you also have like numbers from industry where you've tried this out and sort of measured there, and like, you know, how does that compare with what we've seen here, just from sort of a math perspective?
I think this is sort of representative. I don't think that it's you know, I'm not claiming this is accurate in any data-oriented way, but I think the kind of impact is common. And what I see is it's 30 to 40% of projects don't need to be done. You can actually drive more value. I think you can probably double the return on your portfolio. People don't believe me when I tell them that, so you know, you claim 30 to 50% because that's a little more credible. But these are usually big. They're big impacts. Yeah, please.
This has been great, by the way, so thank you.
Thank you.
What are the metrics that you've seen used commonly around how big and the difficulty level? Is there a really simple way to synthesize that? Is it things like net present value?
Yeah.
Is it grading systems? What works really effectively in dimensionalizing?
What I have found, I'll tell you what I think doesn't work, is scoring rules. So people have this thing where you do strategic fit and size of market and all of that, and you get a scales of 1 to 5. I should qualify this a little bit. That works great for screening. If nobody cares about the outcome, it's wonderful. As soon as it gets serious, that stuff collapses into political dysfunction. So I think you need to actually have analytical, financially oriented metrics. Okay. But what the finance folks do, where they say, make an estimate and give me a spreadsheet with all the years, the wall of numbers, is a complete disaster. So I find it's better to focus on, like for the color die, the management questions that really matter, like how big do you think your market is? And have people talk about what would make that big or make that small, to start to get them to think about the scenarios and quantify the different scenarios. So, and then work through, and I find there are like 8 or 10 critical management questions, like market size or share, how competitive we're going to be. Pricing usually translates to, are we a value priced or a commodity priced kind of company, or how are we managing our price, or maybe sharing it with our, so you got to figure out what your critical management questions are. Start there and build your evaluation system around that, right? And this is a longer conversation, but I've got scars up and down everywhere from this, and have some suggestions for you. Probably time for one more, and then I should probably pay out the prizes. Yeah, Henry.
There you go. Yeah, I just want to say that I absolutely, you saw this morning, we need more oysters. We absolutely support an oyster strategy, but I worry that bread and butters have been overlooked just because we discovered that some of the bread and butters are protecting against the downside that's much larger, and an NPV calculates an upside. And of course the other is if you have a brand promise, that is part of your shareholder equity as well. So there are a couple of other attributes about bread and butters that make it more complex than one or the other.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great clarification, great point. Thank you. All right, so let's have our little payouts. Let's go from the bottom here. So we got unexpected champions.
Okay.
Second place, you guys are where? Here?
Yep, right here.
Thank you. Congratulations. Here's your
$10. Yeah.
$10. And who's next? Bet More did nicely. Where's Bet More? Right here.
More.
Okay. Is that a 5 you got there? Yeah, let me give you a 10. Okay, great. And then we have Oyster Crackers, who has 3 and 4. You guys are Oyster Crackers? Thank you for playing.
Yes.
Thank you for playing. Really appreciate
Your money
it.
will
Thank
buy
you
a
for playing.
very nice margarita tonight.
Yeah. Ask the winners to buy you drinks afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
There are
then
no losers. There's just
lean
pearls.
entrepreneurs. Who are the lean entrepreneurs?
Lean.
Okay, here you go.
$10.
So there's lean entrepreneurs.
Yep. Let's see. Bet
And
more
who's
you
next?
did. Black elephants.
Black elephants.
Black elephants.
You're the black elephants over here?
Yep.
Okay, great. There's your black elephants. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yep.
And they get-
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs.
They got a 10.
Oh, you guys
Right on the goalpost.
just barely made it, right? So congratulations. There you go.
Spaceballs. And then
Does
all
anybody
the way
have
over there.
5s and 10s? Because I'm going to run out here.
Let's see. So, which team?
Well, I can't quite break it just yet. But hold on to that. I'm sure I'll do it soon.
Which teams are at that table? Need more oysters, right?
Who has the 10?
Need more oysters was
Somebody's
a 2.
got a 10.
Success 13.
Okay, need more oysters? You better
Need more
hold on to that.
oysters is 13. They're in the lower.
Need
to the
more
right.
oysters?
To the right. Yep.
Sorry. You guys lost? Okay, well, thank you for playing.
Yes.
Thank you for playing.
Yes.
Thank you for playing.
All right, and then up front, Rich and
Uh-huh.
I forgot your name. Stand up. Stand up.
Yep.
Stand up.
Yeah, here are our winners.
Grand prize winners.
Yay!
We've got
$10 for the score, $20 for the market share bonus,
and you can catch chili
the
chocolate.
chocolate. Congratulations. And everybody been paid out?
Everybody's been paid out.
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. Ream Dragons is claiming poor calculus. I think they're owed $10.
Did I miss somebody? Okay.
Three
Dragons.
go.
You guys have a 10?
We don't. We'll take 20.
Do you take Bitcoin? Do you take Bitcoin?
Yeah, you got some 10s here. All right,
crack
we'll
a
work on
20.
some change here. All right, well, oh, great, thank you. Great.
There you go. He cracked it.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Let's have a special hand for our losers.
Yes.
And another cheer for our winners.
Yahoo! Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. And I think we're going on to a break. So thanks again. And
Yeah. If you
carry on
could
the
for us,
conversation.
just
Oh,
put
yeah.
all your dice back in. You don't have to put them back in the plastic
Yeah.
bag or anything like that.
Yeah,
just
I
stick
would like
everything
the
in the
bags-
pouch. We'll take care of it when we get home.
Exactly.
But if you can
Thank
just put it all back in the pouch, I am very grateful.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.